John 21, verses 1 through 19. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, have you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment round him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 meters. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat, dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 150, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." It was at the Last Supper that Peter says these words to Jesus. Peter asks, "Lord, why can't I follow you? I will lay down my life for you." Then Jesus answered, "Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly I tell you, before the cock crows, you will disown me 3 times. And that's found in John 13, verses 37 through 38. It is well known in the Good Friday story that Peter will not live up to his words. He denies Jesus 3 times in the courtyard. Therefore, we can understand why, despite seeing the resurrected Jesus twice, Peter decides to go fishing. I believe he is anticipating returning to his previous profession, fishing. After all, he failed Jesus when it mattered the most. He denies Jesus not 1, but 3 times. Luke tells us that Jesus weeps bitterly after the 3 denials. Not only does Peter go fishing, he takes 6 other followers of Jesus with him. James and John are in the fishing boat with Peter. All 3 of them are seasoned fishermen, yet they catch nothing that night. Despite the resurrection of Jesus, these followers of Jesus are still without direction. They return to something they know best, fishing. Yet they do not have a fruitful night. I wonder how they feel as they return to the shore that morning. What's in their mind? We have left fishing to follow Jesus all these past 3 years. Then he dies. Then he rises from the dead. Is it Jesus we saw in the room showing us his nail-scarred hands and feet? He even appeared a second time so that he could convince Thomas that it is he, Jesus, who has risen from the dead. Yet right now, all 7 of us, we don't feel too good about our future. So, it is approximately 2 weeks since Easter Sunday. We celebrated Jesus coming alive then. Because he lives, we can face tomorrow, we tell ourselves. However, so quickly we forget about the reality of the resurrection. Like Peter, James, and John, we return to what we know so well, only to find out that despite our many years of fishing, we catch nothing that night. We return to the shore, we find this stranger on the shore. Who is this stranger? John 21 verse 6. He said, "Throw down your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. This happened the first time when Jesus met them. And that's found in Luke chapter 5. They had fished all night and caught nothing, absolutely nothing. Then Jesus told them to drop the nets, and they got so much fish that their nets began to break and their boats began to sink. Now Jesus comes after his resurrection and does the same thing he did when he met them for the first time. He comes after they've had an empty night and gets them to cast their nets at a specific place. Jesus turns their night of emptiness into a morning of abundance. This reminds John of the first time that he and his brother James met Jesus. So therefore, John cries out, "It is the Lord! It is the Lord!" Remember how he got us to catch so much fish the first time we met him. So, then Jesus does something that reminds them of another event. The first event he reminds them about is the first time he met them when he helped them catch so much fish after a night of emptiness. So this is found in John 21 verse 13. Jesus came, took the bread, gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. John 21 verse 13. Jesus feeds them bread and fish. What does that remind them of? It reminds them of a time when Jesus fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. So, if you would read John chapter 6 verse 8 to 9, you will read these verses. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Remember, there were 5,000 men there. So the church that I'm privileged to serve in is called St. Andrew's, Streetsville. The church is named after Andrew, Peter's brother. And remember, at the feeding of the 5,000, they were all hungry after listening to Jesus teach. And Jesus wants to feed them. And they find that they don't have enough money to feed the crowd. So Andrew tries to do something. He looks around and he finds a boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so look at Andrew's concern as he presents the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish to Jesus. He's a very honest person and he puts the facts before Jesus. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. How far will they go among so many? Yes, I believe that Andrew's concern is a form of prayer. He's trying to say to them, we've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. How is this going to feed 5,000 people? And it's the same with our lives too. I've only got so much resources in my life. What am I going to do? Here is just me with a limited bank account and not much time. I'm so busy with my job. How far can I go to serve you, Lord? And so now Jesus reminds them of the feeding of the 5,000 when he feeds them with the fish and the bread. And now he tells them to drop their nets and they catch 153 fish. Then after that, he serves them breakfast and he serves them with bread and fish to remind them of the feeding of the 5,000. So, whatever doubts the followers have about Jesus rising from the dead is now gone. He now appears to them the 3rd time and tells them where to fish, the 3rd time after he's resurrected. He also feeds them breakfast with bread and fish. Remember, it is the 3rd time. There is a significance in the number 3 in the story. During this breakfast with his followers, Jesus has a pep talk with Peter. And when we are reading Jesus' chat with Peter, we get the idea that Jesus seems to be long-winded. 3 times Jesus asks Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And 3 times Simon answers Jesus, "Lord, you know that I love you." And then 3 times Jesus makes this statement, "Feed my sheep." Is Jesus being long-winded? Is Jesus being difficult with Peter? Yet, we must ask this question. How many times did Peter deny Jesus? And how many times does Jesus ask Peter, "Do you love me?" And how many times does Peter say to Jesus, "You know that I love you"? And how many times does Jesus say to Peter, "Feed my sheep"? Jesus restores Peter to the ministry of feeding the sheep. Jesus is not long-winded. Jesus is restoring Peter to pastoral ministry for as many times as as Peter has denied him. 3 times. 3 times. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." John 21:18-19. Church tradition tells me that Peter went on to serve the Lord and proclaimed the gospel all over the Mediterranean. And when Peter was about to die for his faith, he was given a choice as to how he would be martyred, how he would be executed. And it is reported that Peter asked to be crucified upside down. As Peter said this, that he is not worthy to be crucified the same way Jesus was crucified. "As I have fed you, Peter, please feed my sheep." The past is the past. I forgive you. You might have denied me 3 times, but now I want to say to you, I know, Peter, that you love me. Please say so 3 times, Peter. I love you too. Now go forth and feed my sheep. 2 weeks ago, I was in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, and I was amazed at the sight of the beaches. Yet, because I grew up in Malaysia, where there's similar weather and there's similar beaches, initially I could not enter that profound appreciation for the beach and the weather. It took the enthusiasm of my roommate in the retreat, Pastor Ian, who did not grow up in such beaches in Canada, to encourage me to enjoy the beach and the weather. And like Peter, I was restored in some ways to appreciating the beach and the weather. Yet, Peter is restored by Jesus in a much more profound way. Jesus affirms Peter's love for him for each time that Peter has denied him. If Peter has denied him 3 times, Jesus gets him to say, "I love you, Jesus," 3 times. So, like in John 21, the passage we have just read, the resurrected Jesus stands by the shore and offers us a meal. And there are some of us who feel that we have toiled through the night and have caught nothing, absolutely nothing. And there are some of us who, like Andrew, feel that all we have are 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's all we have, Lord. What have we to offer? And there are some of us who feel like Peter. We have denied Jesus 3 times and want to return to fishing because we want to forget about giving up on Jesus. Whatever it is, Jesus offers us a meal to restore us. And that's what communion is. the meal of Jesus for us. And Jesus will take whatever it takes, will do whatever it takes to restore you, even get you to say that you love him 3 times. I just want to read 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 26. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. 1 Corinthians 11, verse 26. Yes, as I share these words, we will just be about to share communion, the Lord's Supper, the breaking of bread. And then Paul tells us that as we eat this bread and drink this cup, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. This means with each passing communion meal we partake of, we are one meal less, if you like, until we share in that great meal with Jesus that is found in Revelation chapter 19, the final book of the Bible, the book that tells us about what will happen on that final day. We are going to share in that great meal with Jesus. And so Jesus is now preparing that meal for us. With each passing communion meal, he is restoring us. And like the followers of Jesus, one day we will reach those shores and we will find that Jesus is still cooking the meal for us. And until that day, we must be content with the Lord's Supper, with communion, with the breaking of bread that we partake of as often as we do it. So therefore, I just want to say to you in closing, Jesus offers us the meal to restore us, and Jesus will do whatever it takes to restore us, even get us to say that we love him 3 times. Amen.